So we are going to go through the Green New Deal of Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez. I know this video is a bit late because the controversy has all been a few days ago, but since she's pulled it off the site and I keep seeing people saying this is in the deal, this is in the deal, we're just going to go through the FAQ, the thing that's been pushed out as a summary of the deal. So I guess put this in the background and listen to it because it'll probably be a bit long, because we're going to go through the whole thing and see exactly what is and isn't in the video. Because I did see that one person, I think it was Mark Dice, put out a joke, like sarcastic thing about how about recycling your own urine that is not actually in the bill. And a lot of other people have been putting out joke things in the bill because it's so ridiculous that it's really hard to tell what is a joke and what isn't. And I'm not saying this is someone that's just a hater that's just trying to look for any, trying to be a partisan, saying, oh, these people are ridiculous. Like, this actually is probably one of the most ridiculous bills I have ever read. I mean, it's not even a bill, it's a plan, a suggestion. Even if it passed, it would be non-binding. It's more of a, if they pass it, it's something it's more of a, like a gesture they're committing to more than actual policy. But this thing is like, I did see someone say something that is entirely accurate, that you would think almost that a bunch of Republicans got together and created like a parody to kind of, like a joke deal to kind of parody what people like AOC believe. And this is what this seems like. But no, it's legit, and it's so bad that they took it down off the site. But we'll go through here so you can see what exactly is in it, and I'll hopefully try to point out every little tidbit that people have been saying is nutty. But here we go. Overview. We will begin work immediately on Green New Deal bills to put the nuts and bolts on the plan described in this resolution. In parentheses, important to say so someone else can claim this mantle. Which, that kind of almost seems like a note that you would put in your own article or own plan as a note to self before you actually publish it, that you would then get rid of to publish it. I've seen people point that out. I'm not an expert on public policy in that, so maybe that's how these bills normally are, but that seems like something they forgot to take out. This is a massive transformation of our society with clear goals and a timeline. The Green New Deal resolution, a 10-year plan, spelling error or grammar error right there, I think they're missing is. The Green New Deal resolution, a 10-year plan to mobilize every aspect of American society at a scale not seen since World War II to achieve net zero greenhouse gas emissions and create economic prosperity for all. It will move America to 100% clean and renewable energy. Remember, 100%, that means no coal, no natural gas, like nothing in 10 years. And I get that 10 years is a long time, a lot can happen in 10 years, but to say 100% in 10 years is impossible. Like, that's just not going to happen. Try going clean, try going 100% clean and renewable right now. And I mean, I get right now isn't 10 years from now, but it's difficult. Like, most of us still rely on natural gas and oil and that. So, to say 100% is just outrageous. Nobody has said this at this point. Until now, of course. Create millions of family-supporting wage union jobs. Okay, everything says that. But again, why is family-supporting wage union jobs part of a deal about being economically friendly? But I guess you have to remember this is replicated off of the New Deal during FDR's. Something that FDR put out during the Great Depression, which is largely credited for just extending and expanding the Great Depression to be even worse. Like, there's a phrase that the New Deal was what made the Depression great. And as far as I can tell, it's legit. I've read lots of books on this. I've read books by people trying to defend the New Deal, and yeah, it's pretty awful. Like, basically what happened was we had our own Great Depression in 1920, and, I mean, of course, you can't even call it a Great Depression because it was as bad as the Great Depression initially, but it just got better. The Great Depression of 1920, nobody talks about it because it lasted 1 year. It was really bad, and then it fixed itself. And that's why we don't talk about it, because it literally just fixed itself. Money and investments were the economy kind of rearranged itself, dumped all the bad investments and fixed all the good investment and went into new, better investments. And that wasn't like government run. That just happened. And I mean, yes, unemployment went up as all these people were fired from bad investments, and then they got jobs in better investments when that opened up, and it all took about a year. It was bad, but it fixed itself. And then we look at the Great Depression, where they basically said, okay, all of these bad investments, stay there. Like, don't do anything. Don't fire anyone. Stay there. That's essentially what the New Deal did. It was like, okay, we're going to take all this money that we have from good investments and pour it into bad investments. Like, remember that paying someone to literally accomplish nothing. Like to dig a hole and then fill the hole back in. That is a bad investment. That's what the New Deal did. So we're already basing this off of a faulty deal. But anyway, that was a bit of a tangent. Ensure a just transition for all communities and workers to ensure economic security for people and communities that have historically relied on fossil fuel industries. So essentially, like, government should go in and obviously, like, we're going to lose a bunch of jobs. Like, all the coal miners are going to be fired. All of the people working in natural gas, all the people working in oil drills, they're all going to lose their jobs because we're not going to be drilling for that anymore. So the government needs to come in and transition those people into better jobs. They don't say exactly how yet. I mean, at this point in the going down through this New Deal policy, but it's something that's going to happen, and probably going to be through like re-education, government, like subsidized education, that kind of thing. Ensure justice and equity. Notice equity, not equality. Equality is more like equality of opportunity. Equity is more outcome, everyone being the same. Ensure justice and equity for frontline communities by prioritizing investment, training, climate and community resiliency, economic and environmental benefits in these communities. So essentially, ensure justice and equity in prioritize investments in the communities of people that are going to lose their jobs from this policy, basically. Build on FDR's second Bill of Rights by guaranteeing a job with, this is the crazy part here that a lot of people have cited. A job with a family sustaining, okay. I keep interrupting because I got to give background here. These people are saying, or this bill is saying, these things here are rights. These are human rights that must be justified by the government. The government must defend and enforce these rights. And the rights are as follows: a job with family sustaining wage, family and medical leave, vacations and retirement security. High quality education, including higher education and trade schools, essentially free college. Clean air and water and access to nature. Healthy food. I'm not sure how you justify those things. I'm not sure how you ensure that's a right. I don't know if we're just gonna give people food, mandate that the government will supply people with food, or if we're gonna nationalize industries. I'm not sure. High quality healthcare, again, Medicare for all. Safe, affordable, adequate housing, and economic environment free of monopolies. How are we going to do that? That's actually something that's kind of impossible to be, I'm anti-monopoly. Lots of people are anti-monopoly, of course. Even capitalists are anti-monopoly in a sense. Economic environment free of monopolies. I mean, you kind of need a monopoly to get rid of monopolies. Like, if we're talking about government nationalizing industries, what you're doing is creating a monopoly. If you're saying government needs to monopolize the healthcare industry or any kind of industry, that government has a monopoly there in that respect. And of course, with how corrupt things are now, a lot of the government regulations we see already mandate monopolies. Not mandate, but they encourage monopolies. So I don't see how anything she's said thus far or will say in the future is going to stop these monopolies. Economic security for all who are unwilling. Economic security for all who are unable or unwilling to work. This is the one thing I've seen the most from this bill. It is guaranteeing economic security, meaning a standard of living, a certain amount of income for all who are unable, or unwilling to work. So if you don't want to work, it is a right to get enough economic security, in other words, money, to live. That is the part that has been nuts. If I flat out say, I don't want to work, I'm not willing to work, I guess they mean universal basic income, I'm not sure, but apparently I will get money. There is no time to waste. IPCC report said global emissions must be cut by 40 to 60% by 2030. U.S. is 20% of total emissions. We must get to zero by 2030 and lead the world in a global Green New Deal. Now, the problem with cutting emissions is, I'm not against cutting emissions. I'm not against saving the environment. But one of the things that makes this so difficult is that we already industrialized. And there are lots of other countries out there, specifically China, that is currently industrializing. They are currently going through this industrial revolution in a lot of these developing countries to raise their standard of living to what the first world has. And to do that, they're having to produce a lot of carbon emissions. Now, the thing is, you have to pick there. Do we really have the right to say to these countries, you're not allowed to use to have any kind of carbon output, or you must reduce your carbon emissions at the cost of raising the standard of living? That's a difficult question. And one of the things this New Deal, and a lot of people, it seems that the really far left people really seem to ignore is if you're really going to stop climate change, like if climate change is this, I don't know if it is or not. I'm just going to, like, I haven't read the research. I don't know how big of a deal climate change is. I've seen so many people say so many different things. I have to read the research. I haven't done that yet. So at this point, I'm just going to, like, assume for the sake of this bill that climate change is a thing and it's a thing we need to stop. But you have to realize, like, if it's this bad thing, then to fix it and then to stop climate change is not going to be a very fun thing. Like, it's like if you have cancer and you're going to go through chemotherapy. We're not going to say chemotherapy is all sunshine and happiness and easy. Like, no one's going to go to the hospital, or no doctor is going to tell someone for the vast majority of cases, oh, well, actually you have this disease, and, well, it's going to be a breeze to cure, no problem at all, happy days, like, no problem. No, that's not what happens. Whenever you have to go through something bad, whenever you have to, like, fix something that's currently a problem, you have to suffer through it. Like, imagine we have this obesity crisis in the US. Imagine if we were to come out and say, well, getting rid of obesity, no big deal, it's all happy and fine, no big deal, like, it's not a problem. You can eat whatever you want, and also simultaneously we're going to stop obesity. That's not how this works, but that's what this bill and a lot of other people seem to say. Like, oh, we can stop climate change. We can totally defeat climate change and also give everyone free everything. We can give money to people who are unwilling to work. And at the same time, everything's just going to be fine. That's the problem with this bill, is it promises everything good. Like, there's no suffering, there's no issues, and I don't get that. Like, do people really believe that the problem in this world is just super easy to fix, and, like, everyone can have mansions, and everyone, even if you're unwilling to work, you can live fine and no big deal? Like, I don't get that. I don't understand that. That you have to understand, like, if things are bad, we're going to have to suffer. But the problem is, if you're a politician, it doesn't get votes to come out and say, okay, we're going to fix this, and it's going to be rough. Like, that's the problem with recessions, economic recessions. Nobody wants to come out and say, yeah, economic recessions are going to be rough, we're going to have to tough through it, but things will be okay. No, they say, oh, just, like, the government will fix it. That's the issue I see here. Americans love a challenge. This is our moonshot. When JFK said we go to the by the end of the decade, another... You can tell they never even read over this, which says a lot. Like, if this is the quality of the report, if they can't even put out a report without spelling errors, how are we going to trust them to fix the economy and also fix the environment? Like, I don't get it. When I'm reading this word for word. When JFK said we go to by the end of the decade, people said impossible. I'm going to assume there was supposed to be a moon in there somewhere. And I have seen fact checkers say, like, this is actually not true. The statement is not true. People wouldn't say it was impossible. Some people said it'd be too much money. Some people said it'd be not worth the time. Lots of people said, sure, it might be possible. I mean, I guess it just says people, and sure, like, people say anything. You can get 6 people and say people said this. If Eisenhower wanted to build the interstate highway system today, people would ask how we'd pay for it. Yes, we would. When FDR called on America to build 185,000 planes to fight World War II, every business leader, CEO, and general laughed at him. At the time, the U.S. had produced 3,000 planes in the last year. By the end of the war, we produced 300,000 planes. That's what we are capable of if we have real leadership. And I mean, we accomplished that. America can do great things. I don't see what the point is. Like, sure, America can do great things. That doesn't mean that whenever you want to bring up something that we can just do it and we're going to take your word for it. Like, no, we have to figure this out. We have to work through this. And just kind of saying, like, yeah, we can do whatever we want, and then leaving it at that is not going to work. This is massive investment in our economy and society, not expenditure. We invested 40 to 50% of GDP into our economy during World War II and created the greatest middle class the U.S. has ever seen. That's not how that worked, really. Like, a lot of, like, that's an issue. Half the people will say, oh, like, the Great Depression was fixed by the New Deal, and then people say, no, that's not true. World War II fixed the Great Depression. Really, that's not true, because think about what the World War II was. World War II, we took a lot of working age men and we sent them off somewhere else to destroy things. And I'm not saying that we didn't need to do that. I'm not saying we didn't have to do that. I'm saying you can't say the economy was good because we took a bunch of working age men and sent them somewhere else. And then on top of that, what we did was we took the remaining workers and we essentially said, okay, instead of producing things for our economy, instead of producing goods and services that our people can use, we're going to build tanks and planes and guns and bullets and uniforms and all that stuff. And produce gasoline for all that, and we're going to ship it off somewhere else and it's never coming back. Like, that's not how you create an economy. You don't just create jobs, you create wealth. And what happened during World War II was we created wealth, and then we sent it off to Europe to fight the Nazis. That's what happened. You can't say that by producing a bunch of stuff and then sending it elsewhere to be destroyed will help the economy. I mean, am I saying we shouldn't have gotten to World War II? No, I'm not saying that. I'm saying it's not going to help the economy. That's not how that works. Creating jobs that produce nothing is not good for the economy. It's not about creating jobs, it's about creating value, about creating resources and wealth. This is massively expanding existing and building new industries at a rapid pace, growing our economy. The Green New Deal has momentum. 92% of Democrats and 64% of Republicans support the Green New Deal. I need citations on that because remember that they pulled out, they actually got rid of this on the website because it was so bad. So I want to know how they cited that. They probably just said, "Do you support a good environment and a good economic policy?" And people were like, "Sure." And apparently that was what they used to cite this. Nearly every major Democratic presidential contender say they back the Green New Deal, including Elizabeth Warren, Cory Booker, Kamala Harris, Jeff Merkley, Julian Castro, Kirsten Gillibrand, Bernie Sanders, Tulsi Gabbard, and Jay Inslee. I don't know some of those people, but a lot of them are presidential candidates. So just remember how far left. And I'm not just saying like, oh, it seems like they've gone farther left because they're supporting this. Remember that Pew Research even says that the Democratic Party is going farther left. So that's just not me being a partisan. Like, that's Pew Research there. 45 House representatives and 330 plus groups backed the original resolution for a select committee. Over 300 local and state politicians have called for a federal Green New Deal. New resolution has 20 co-sponsors, about 30 groups. Numbers will change by Thursday. Now, again, what does this mean? This is just an appeal of authority. This is just saying other people support it, therefore you must. That doesn't mean too much because as we were going through, this thing is pretty dang ridiculous. Like, we just went through the overview. And, I mean, remember that apparently all of these people are saying they are okay with giving money to people who are unwilling to work. And remember that money has to come from somewhere, which means it's coming. If you are currently working, it's going to come from you. FAQ. Why 100% clean and renewable and not just 100% renewable? Are you saying we won't transition off fossil fuels? Yes, we are calling for a full transition off fossil fuels and zero greenhouse gases. Zero greenhouse gases. Note that there. Anyone who has read the resolution sees that we spell this out through a plan that calls for eliminating greenhouse gas emissions from every sector of the economy. Simply banning fossil fuels immediately won't build a new economy to replace it. This is the plan to build that new economy and spells out how to do it technically. We do this through a huge mobilization to create the renewable energy economy as fast as possible. We set a goal to get to net zero rather than zero emissions in 10 years because we aren't sure that we'll be able to fully get rid of farting cows and airplanes that fast. But we think we can ramp up renewable manufacturing and power production, retrofit every building in America, build the smart grid, overhaul transportation and agriculture, plant lots of trees, and restore our ecosystem to get to net zero. So I guess that gives you a summary of what is in the actual deal. Note I will admit this isn't the actual deal. This is the overview. This is the summary of the Green New Deal. The actual deal, it's a lot longer, and I'm not a legal expert either. So me going through that would be pretty much useless. But yeah, they are talking about getting rid of farting cows. They're talking about getting rid of airplanes and cars and all this stuff. They're talking about getting rid of all this stuff that we rely on so much. And, I mean, it's a lot easier said than done. I'm just going to say that. Is nuclear a part of this? A Green New Deal is a massive investment in renewable energy production and would not include creating new nuclear plants. It's unclear if we will be able to decommission every nuclear plant within 10 years, but the plan is to transition off of nuclear and all fossil fuels as soon as possible. No one has put the full 10-year plan together yet, and if it is possible to get to fully 100% renewable in 10 years, we will do that. So no, this doesn't include nuclear power plants. And nuclear, I'm not going to say nuclear power plants are one of the safest and most clean forms of energy. Yeah, they produce radiation. Yes, we're talking about a lot of radioactive waste here. But the thing is, that's still much cleaner than coal and natural gas, and it's still pretty dang clean. And it's still pretty safe, too. People think of 3 Mile Island. Remember 3 Mile Island and all that? Remember, I live not too far from 3 Mile Island. I've seen it multiple times. I used to live around there, and that it's in my state. when it comes to like nuclear disasters, they are rare. But the thing is, when they're so rare that when they happen, like everyone talks about them. Like it's kind of like I hate to say this, but it's kind of like school shootings in that or not school shootings, sorry, like mass shootings. Like they don't really happen that often, but they're brought up all the time. Now the thing about school shootings and mass shootings, there is no benefit to that at all. Like, so even though they're rare, there's still something we can work about. Now, nuclear power, for example, sure, the bad things happen, but the benefits far outweigh the doubts. Like, if you want to get to a clean environment, nuclear is the way to go. That's how you do it. Does this include a carbon tax? The Green New Deal is a massive investment in the production of renewable energy, industries, and infrastructure. We cannot simply tax gas and expect workers to figure out another way to get to work unless we've first created a better, more affordable option. So we're not ruling a carbon tax out, but a carbon tax would be a tiny part of a Green New Deal in the face of the gigantic expansion of our productive economy and would have to be preceded by first creating the solutions necessary so that workers and working class communities are not affected. While a carbon tax may be a part of the Green New Deal, it misses the point and would be off the table unless we create the clean, affordable options first. So this is a lot of like, it just says nothing. It says they might do a carbon tax, but they're talking about something way bigger. Does this include cap and trade? The Green New Deal is about creating the renewable energy economy through a massive investment in our society and economy. Cap and trade assumes the existing market will solve the problem for us, and that's simply not true. While cap and trade may be a tiny part of the larger Green New Deal plan to mobilize our economy, any cap and trade legislation will pale in comparison to the size of the mobilization and must recognize that existing legislation can incentivize companies to create toxic hotspots in frontline communities, so anything here must ensure that frontline communities are prioritized. So what they're saying here is, like, when people talk about the carbon tax or cap and trade, they're saying, okay, we have a market economy. How can we incentivize it to be more eco-friendly? That's what they're talking about. What this is talking about is saying, yeah, we don't even want a market economy. We don't want the current economy. We need to completely overhaul this. That's what they're talking about. They're actually, I hate to say this, legitimately talking about full socialism. And I don't think I am being paranoid or overreacting about this. What I've described so far is pretty much full socialism. We're not talking about Denmark or the Scandinavian countries, which are not socialist. They have a market economy with a huge welfare state. That is social democracy. I am not a social democrat. I am not for that, but it's not socialism. What we are advocating for here is, again, giving money to everyone who doesn't want to work. We're talking about getting rid of farting cows and airplanes. We're talking about like a complete overhaul of just... Remember, this is a government doing this. Like, this is a government that is pretty much saying, hey, like, we're getting rid of this. And this just seems completely unrealistic and massively authoritarian. Does a GND, Green New Deal, ban all new fossil fuel infrastructure or nuclear power plants? The Green New Deal makes new fossil fuel infrastructure or nuclear plants unnecessary. This is a massive mobilization of all our resources into renewable energies. It would simply not make sense to build new fossil fuel infrastructure because we will be creating a plan to reorient our entire economy to work off renewable energy. Simply banning fossil fuels and nuclear plants immediately won't build a new economy or replace it. So this is the plan to build a new economy and spells out how to do it technically. So we're talking about, again, a new economy here. We're not talking about the market economy, or we are talking about a new economy. She's talking about completely overhauling all of this. And again, full socialism. I think the words new economy is a sign of like, yeah, capitalism doesn't work. We need socialism or something along those lines. But of course they can't say the word socialism because the amount of people supporting that like would make this deal a lot less popular. But notice again, it's a lot of like word salad, like no, but yes, kind of, but no, not really, kind of just stuff that it's a workaround. Are we going to ban nuclear power plants and new fossil fuel infrastructure? No, but we're saying people won't want to build it. Well, I mean, you're going to kind of have to ban it. Like, at that point, if we're going to overhaul this and say, like, people aren't going to want nuclear power plants, no, that's not going to work. Because you know what happens is people want energy. Like, that's the thing. People want energy, and at no point are they just going to say, we don't want energy. At no point are they going to say, yeah, I have enough energy. Like, no, people want more. People want more technology. Think of all the outlets you use in your house. Think of, like, air conditioners and heaters and all this stuff. Like, think about how much, and gasoline and all. Think about how much people save because they realize it's expensive. Like, Think of yourself. Like, if you're someone that has to pay your current heating, power, water bill, imagine if you suddenly didn't have to pay for that. Like, you would use more. You would be less. You might even think like, oh, well, I care about the environment, so I wouldn't use more. No, that's just human nature. Like, when you don't have to pay, when you don't have to suffer the consequences of something, you're less careful with it. So if we're going to say that like everything's going to be great and happy and we're going to get free college and all that, are you really telling me that people are just going to like just not going to ask for more energy? That's not what's going to happen. If let's say she found a way where all of the existing energy was completely replaced by completely not our renewable resources, green energy and that, people would still say, hey, I want more. And there's only so much green energy can do. Like, if we were to cover every rooftop in the US in solar panels, people would still want more energy. Like, that's just how that works. People always want more. Are you for CCUS? We believe the right to capture carbon is to plant trees and restore our natural ecosystems. CCUS technology to date has not proven effective. How will you pay for it? The same way we paid for the New Deal, the 2008 bank bailout, and extended quantitative easing programs. The same way we paid for World War II and all of our current wars. The Federal Reserve can extend credit to power these projects and investments, and new public banks can be created to extend credit. There is also space for the government to take an equity stake in projects to get a return on investment. At the end of the day, this is an investment in our economy, and that should grow our wealth as a nation. So the question isn't how we pay for it, but what we will do with our new shared prosperity. I hate this mindset. I really don't like this mindset where people are like, well, when someone asks, how are you going to pay for this? And all they do is they point to someone else massively overspending. And they're like, well, we paid for that and everything's fine. It's like, no, we didn't. Like, we're still in debt. We're still massively in debt. The New Deal, like, look at the national debt throughout American history. New Deal shot up. World War II shot up. Like, we went massively into debt for that. And we just started paying it off. And over time. And then, of course, as we started paying it off, we started spending more and more and more. Bush doubled our spending. Obama doubled our spending. Trump spending is still going up. In fact, I don't know if he's set to double it or not. I don't think he's set to double it, but he's increasing spending as well. So no, like, eventually things are going to snap. Things are going to break. Like, I don't see why this is so people don't think about this. You can't just keep spending money. Like, that's not how that works. There are people that actually believe, there are economists that actually believe you can just literally keep spending money and creating it out of thin air and everything will be fine. And that's not how this is going to work. Like, how do we pay for the New Deal? Well, we paid for it by going massively into debt, and it took a while to pay that back. The New Deal didn't even work. Like, it made the Depression worse. How do we pay for it? With a Great Depression, honestly. The 2008 bank bailout. Like, how do we pay for that? We didn't pay for that. We just kind of kicked the can down the road. Extended quantitative easing programs, I would argue, they have done more bad than good. They have not helped the economy. How do we pay for them? We went further into debt. How do we pay for World War II? We went into debt. We're still carrying that debt now. Debt's what, 23 trillion, 22 trillion, and counting? It's probably a lot higher at the time of recording this video, but it's super high. It's like, eventually things are going to snap. That's how it works. Eventually things are going to snap. Now, you might wonder, like, why hasn't it snapped yet? Why hasn't anything bad happened? Why were people saying back in 2010 that our national debt's a problem and we're going to bust soon, and hasn't that happened? They make a valid point. Like, nothing bad has happened yet. Sure. But you got to remember that if the U.S. ever, like, defaults on the debt, that's going to be like a world recession. Because our economy is tied so much, or is so intermingled with other economies, that if we hit a recession, that's going to ripple across the world. We saw that with 2008. A lot of other economies in other countries got hit because we went through a recession. Because things are so intermingled, and we're running out of money. And a lot of these countries, a lot of these banks, like, it is in their best interest to keep letting the U.S. go further and further into debt, because if that thing breaks, like, we're all going to get hurt. And what happens is, eventually, it becomes worse. Like, think about it, if I were to take out a credit card. I could take out a credit card, I could raise my standard of living, and everything would be fine. On the surface, everything would be fine. I could raise my standard of living without working just by taking out a credit card. Well, eventually, I'm going to max out that card. So I have to get another credit card. I'm going to max out that card. And eventually, I'll get another credit card, max out that card. And eventually, word's going to get around, like, I'm going to owe so much in just interest that eventually, credit card companies are going to say, no, I'm not going to give you a new credit card. Why? Because I don't want to get stuck with that. Like, they're going to say, I don't want to get stuck with all that debt. It doesn't seem to me that you're going to pay that back. I don't want to be that last person in line. And what's going to happen is, like, eventually the system gets so bloated that it's gonna snap. And when will it be? I don't know. I'm not an expert. All I can say is it's kind of like the longer you go, the worse it gets. So I hate this line of thinking of, oh, other people spent ridiculously, therefore we can spend ridiculously. No, that's dumb. Like, imagine using that logic anywhere else. Oh, someone else did this thing. Like, other people have murdered people. Like, other people have done this. Other people have cheated and stolen and all that. And, oh, if they can do it, why can't I do it? Like, that's this line of thinking, and I don't like it. How will you pay for it? She didn't say how we'd pay for it. She just said, oh, well, we could pay for other things, so we can pay for this. No, that's not how this works. 2008 bank ballot was not a complete overhaul of our economy. The quantitative easing, that was not a complete overhaul of our economy. World War II, it was kind of an overhaul. Like, it wasn't a new economy, but it cost a lot. Like, the people suffered quite a bit from that. Why do we need a sweeping Green New Deal investment program? Why can't we just rely on regulations and taxes and the private sector to invest alone, such as a carbon tax or a ban on fossil fuels? The level of investment required is massive. Yes, so again, just very last point was, oh, we can pay for this, it's fine. And then the very next point of, oh, this investment is like massive. Like, this is something you've never seen before. Even if every billionaire and company came together and were willing to pour all the resources at their disposal into this investment, the aggregate value of the investments they could make would not be sufficient. So what you're saying is, we can somehow pay for this, even if every billionaire and company came together and put all of their resources, we still couldn't pay for it. So what I have to wonder is, like, what? How is this gonna? I don't get it. Like, this, I don't get it. She's saying that, oh, like, we're gonna, like, it's gonna be an investment. Like, it's not that it's gonna be rough. It's not that we can make this investment and it'll eventually pay off. Like, it's not that we're going to make this investment because 100 years down the line it'll pay off. No, she's saying this is somehow profitable. And the question I have to ask is, if it's profitable, why haven't people done it? Like, that's usually how that works. If it's not profitable, people won't do it. It's sure, there are times where there's this great resource we could have, and people haven't gone into that yet. And people haven't taken advantage of that yet. Sure, but what you have to realize is there are incentives right now. If green energy and that, like, if this massive overhaul really is that profitable, there's a massive pressure on everyone in the U.S. to take that investment and go for it. Because if you're going to make all this money, like, again, there's that pressure. Like, other people would have done it by now. And we do see people investing in green energy, but that's the rate we need to go at. When people invest in green energy, they expect to make money off of it, and they do. That's what happens. Like, when you have a private economy where people make profit off of these investments, people are more likely to invest in those things. That's how that works. The speed of investment required would be massive. Even if all the billionaires and companies could make the investments required, they would not be able to pull together a coordinated response in the narrow window of time required to jumpstart major new projects and major new economic sectors. Also, private companies are wary of making massive investments in unproven research and technologies. That's true. But you got to remember that I forget, there's a phrase for that about, like, the pioneer, where essentially the first person to invest into this will make a killing. Like, if it is a good investment, the first person to do it's going to make a killing. Which puts that much which puts that much more, like, incentive to do it. Also, private. Oh, I already went through that. The government, however, has the time horizon to be able to patiently make investments in new tech and R&D without necessarily having a commercial outcome or application in mind at the time the investment is made. So what you're saying is essentially that the nice thing about government is it can invest in things without worrying about profit. Well, that again hurts the whole, where is this money coming from? Major examples of government investment include new tech that subsequently spurred a boom in the private sector, including DARPA projects, the creation of the internet, and perhaps most recently the government's investment in Tesla. Now, I mean, I'm not gonna say that a government cannot produce good things, because it can. But what happened? It's all down to the incentive thing. Like, government can produce things, but it's not the government's own money. It's not creating things for profit, which means that it is less likely, like, the incentives are just different. It's less likely to produce something that's worthwhile. It could, theoretically, but that's, I believe it's the Pareto, there's Pareto superior and Pareto inferior, I believe, If something is Pareto superior, that means it's probably a good investment. If it's Pareto inferior, that means we can't say it's a good investment. I might have that wrong. Don't fact check me on that. But essentially what it's saying is, like, the government, if you're not using your own money, if you don't have to suffer the consequences of failing, then you can create whatever you want. It just might not be, like, it's less likely to be successful than if the private sector did it. That's how that works. Like, if your money is on the line and you have to make a profit, then you're going to be much more selective in what you invest in. Sure, like they're saying, like AOC is saying right here, oh yeah, DARPA projects, creation of the internet, which, I mean, they created a protocol. They didn't create the whole internet, they created a protocol. And then the private sector kind of took that over and really made it great. But all we're saying is, like, this, if you were to come up with the list of, like, oh, government projects and private sector projects, it's not even close. It's not even close. It's not even a competition. Private sector easily does way better. Simply put, we don't need to just stop doing some things we are doing, like using fossil fuels for energy needs. We also need to start doing new things like overhauling whole industries or retrofitting all buildings to be energy efficient. So, yeah, that's another thing in the deal. It says we are going to overhaul every single building in the United States to be energy efficient. Every single building. Which, like, you have to remember, it took, what, over 200 years? 300 years to create the United States to what it is today? And now we're just all of a sudden going to be able to, like, over the next 10 years, just fix every single building so that it's energy efficient? No, that's not how it works. Then she's talking about overhauling whole industries. What does that mean? Like, overhauling whole industries? You're either going to say, okay, we're going to direct businesses to do this. We're not going to nationalize the businesses, but we're going to essentially control them. That is, by definition, fascism, right? Like, I'm not one to say, oh, that's fascist. I'm not one to overuse terms like that. Like, I'm not going to start calling things that because I think they're that unless I'm very confident. That is, by definition, fascism. Like, everyone's talking about how bad fascism is. Oh, we have a fascist president. We have a fascist this. Like, this is the literal definition of fascism if she's not talking about nationalizing things, and if she is talking about, like, basically governing and managing companies like this and saying telling companies what to do, basically. Not in terms of little regulations here and there, but managing companies, like that. If essentially the government has more power, more management over a company than the CEO. Like, if the CEO does something and the government's the one that says, okay, CEO, you have to do this, go this route, go this, invest in this, do this. That is, that's what fascism is. Now, maybe she's talking about just nationalizing the industry. That's socialism. It's not any better. Starting to do new things requires some upfront investment. Yeah, a lot. Apparently more than every billionaire in the U.S. In the same way that a company that is trying to change how it does business may need to make big upfront capital investments today in order to reap future benefits, for e.g., building a new factory to increase production or buying new hardware and software to totally modernize its IT system. A company that is trying to change how its economy works will need to make big investments today to jumpstart and develop new projects and sectors to power the new economy. Merely incentivizing the private sector doesn't work, e.g. the tax incentives and subsidies given to wind and solar projects have been a valuable spur to growth in the U.S. renewables industry, but even with such investment promotion subsidies, the present level of such projects is simply inadequate to transition to a fully greenhouse gas neutral economy as quickly as needed. Again, I don't see any justification for this too. Why do we need to do this so quickly? Why? Like, why can't the market solve this? Because the interesting thing is, there are actually quite a lot of, like, environmental economists and scientists working on how much of an emergency is climate change. And that's even assuming it needs to be fixed. But I've read quite a few books by like economists that their job is to do this stuff. Their job is to really research and say, can the market solve climate change, and is it worth the cost? And basically, the market can do it better. Like, because you got to remember that stopping climate change isn't the most important thing ever. Human prosperity is the most important thing ever. Like, some people have been putting the environment over humanity. I disagree. Like, some people have been even gone so far as to say, like, the entire, like, if humanity was destroyed, that would be okay if it meant saving the environment. And I disagree. Like, I don't care about the environment. I care about humanity. I know people are going to take that quote and out of context. But yeah, I care about the environment as much as to the point of that it's beneficial for humanity. That's the thing. Humanity comes first. Prosperity comes first. If we're going to if we have to choose between wiping out the environment and wiping out humanity, I would choose wiping out the environment. Now, obviously, those both are linked. But what I see is people saying we need to we need to suffer to save the environment. I disagree with that. If saving the environment is good for humanity, which I think it is, then yes, good. But what I've seen is people saying, well, you got to remember that climate change isn't the worst thing ever if it's small. Like, if our climate is changing a little bit, we can overcome that. If it costs like $50 trillion to stop climate change, but the harmful effects of climate change are like 10 trillion, then it's not worth it. Then we can just work around that. We can overcome that. And that's what I think people are ignoring. Merely incentivizing the private sector. Oh, I already read that, didn't I? Once again, we're not saying that there isn't a role for private sector investments. We're just saying that the level of investment required will need every actor to pitch in, and that the government is best placed to be the prime driver. So again, what we're saying here is that this thing is so incredibly massive that government needs to manage it all. So we're talking about, again, like full socialism or something. That government needs to completely take control here, like massively authoritarian. And on top of that, they're also saying that every single billionaire and every single company could put all their money in and it's still not enough. Who's left? Us. Like, we're all going to have to suffer here to apparently pay for that, even though we're all going to get Medicare for all and free college. It's nonsense. Resolution summary, created in consultation with multiple groups from environmental community, environmental justice community, and labor community. 5 goals in 10 years. Here we go. Here's the 5 goals for 10 years. Net zero greenhouse gas emissions through a fair and just transition for all communities and workers. Create millions of high-wage jobs and ensure prosperity and ensure economic security for all. Again, this is all it's a summary, so you're not going to see the really details and logic behind it, but not like this just cannot happen. Invest in infrastructure and industry to sustainably meet the challenges of the 21st century. Clean air and water, climate and community resiliency, healthy food, access to nature, and sustainable environment for all. Promote justice and equity by stopping current, preventing future, and repairing historic oppression of frontline and vulnerable communities. So now she's bringing up like stop racial injustice and that in a deal about the Green New Deal. I mean, I'm not against stopping racial injustice, but it literally is. Like, people have been like making fun of AOC and comparing her to like a 6-year-old. Like a 6-year-old wrote this. This is literally what it seems like. Like like it just seems like they took, okay, what are good things I want, and then wrote it down. Like, that's it. Like, there's nothing. I see no. It's just so outside of being able to afford this. And I'm sure there might be there's probably going to be one person watching this video that, I mean, they haven't made it this far, but there's going to be one person watching this video that's going to be like, oh, well, you're against this. You hate the environment. You hate people. You hate prosperity. You hate poor people. Like, it's just not going to happen. I'm sorry. Like, it's if I see 2 people arguing over something and one is advocating something that sounds really good and the other is advocating something that sounds really bad, I hate to say this, but I'm not going to like side blindly with one. But I'm probably going to lean towards the one that sounds bad because it's probably more realistic, to be honest. Like, if someone's going to say, yeah, we're going to have to suffer through this. Like, we can't raise the minimum wage. We can't do this. We can't do that. And we're going to have to suffer through this. I'm probably going to side with them because it sounds very realistic. And it sounds a lot better than someone saying, yeah, we can have free college, Medicare for all, like free healthcare for everyone. We can have a great economy, much better than ever seen before, 0 emissions without any suffering whatsoever. Like, no. That's why it always confuses me when I see people advocate for free healthcare and then simultaneously advocate for, like, we need to stop climate change right now. Like, what do you think free healthcare is? That's such a waste. There's so much waste in free healthcare because what you're doing is you're not making cost important. And unfortunately, cost is important in everything, including healthcare. And what you're doing is say, like, yeah, just spend whatever you want, whatever for the people. Like, that's what they're saying. They're saying, just if you stubbed your toe, go to the ER. And people do that people do that. They go to the ER for the stupidest things when they don't have to pay for it. And that is so much waste there. And remember, like, healthcare of all industries. Like, healthcare is all about, like, oh, something has to be completely sterile, which means as soon as you use something, either put it through a very expensive procedure to sterilize it or throw it out and get a new one. That's very expensive. That's very wasteful. That's just the fact of healthcare. Like, the more you care for people, the more wasteful it is, and you have to find that fine line. National mobilization, our economy through, again, more typos, which, I mean, it's because now that I'm, like, having to write articles that go out to, that thousands of people read, I have to, like, reread my stuff and make sure I don't have spelling errors. And it's kind of sad when me, who, like, doesn't even get paid for their article, like, I write my articles for free. It's kind of sad when I put more effort into my content than someone putting out a Green New Deal plan. Again, that just tells you something. Like, if they can't even fix the spelling errors in their report, how good is the actual report? How good is this actually going to be in practice? National mobilization, our economy through 14 infrastructure and industrial projects. Every project strives to remove greenhouse gas emissions and pollution from every sector of our economy. Here we go. Build infrastructure to create resiliency against climate change-related disasters. Repair and upgrade U.S. infrastructure. ASCE estimates this is $4.6 trillion at minimum. Friendly reminder that the income from the U.S. The U.S. government gets about $3 trillion in income per year. I think it's a bit higher than that, like 3.3 now. Meet 100% of power demand through clean and renewable energy resources. Build energy efficient, distributed smart grids and ensure affordable access to electricity. Upgrade or replace every building in U.S. for state-of-the-art energy efficiency. Massively expand clean manufacturing like solar panel factories, wind turbine factories, battery and storage manufacturing, energy efficient manufacturing components, and remove pollution and greenhouse gas emissions from manufacturing. Work with farmers and ranchers to create a sustainable pollution and greenhouse gas free food system that ensures universal access to healthy food and expands independent family farming. Totally overhaul transportation by massively expanding and electric vehicle manufacturing, build charging stations everywhere. Again, that's how detailed this is, just build charging stations everywhere. Build out high-speed rail at a scale where air travel stops becoming necessary. So what we're saying is essentially get rid of planes. She's saying it's just going to, we're just going to stop having planes naturally. It's just going to naturally happen because we can do rails, but no. I mean, I have nothing against trains. Trains are cool. But, no. No. Create affordable public transit available to all. Now we're saying, affordable public transit. So we're not even going to get an income from this stuff. Because, again, this whole thing is just saying, we're going to have all this stuff and no one's going to have to pay for it. With goal to replace every combustion engine vehicle over 10 years. A lot can happen in 10 years, but jeez. It's just a fantasy. It's not going to happen. Mitigate long-term health effects of climate change and pollution. Remove greenhouse gases from our atmosphere and pollution through afforestation. I think that just means building, planting more trees. Preservation and other methods of restoring our natural ecosystems. Restore all our damaged and threatened ecosystems. Think of how expensive that is. Clean up all the existing hazardous waste sites and abandoned sites. Identify new emission sources and create solutions to eliminate those emissions. Make the U.S. the leader in addressing climate change and share our technology, expertise, and products with the rest of the world to bring about a global Green New Deal. So, if you haven't yet, take some time. I'm actually reading a book right now by John Stossel, Myths, Lies, and Downright Stupidity. I have it right here, actually. But yeah, decent book. I'm going through it right now. That will not focus, but okay. But essentially what I'm saying, what the things just goes through, John Stossel did a lot, he does the consumer reporting stuff, where he just goes through and, does, investigations in corrupt companies and wasteful spending and all that. And invests in, and just looks at that. And this book is just going through all his years of research, and there's so much waste. There's so much corruption. I just listened to a podcast on a guy that used to do, he was the investigator for, Medicaid fraud and all that. And there's so much waste in government programs like that. There's so much waste in this system. There's so much corruption that, if you were to start doing stuff like this, if you were to start, there should be so much waste and corruption. Because that's what people do. That's what most people do. They find the loopholes. They find the way to exploit it as much as possible. The guy that was talking about Medicaid fraud said, Medicare and Medicaid are paying for for like nursing homes and that barely have any people. Like they'll say, yeah, we're taking care of 3 people, and then they'll write on the board, they'll write on the bills or whatever. Yeah, bill us for like we actually took care of like 40 people. Send us our money, and it's all waste. There's so much waste, and that bugs me. And we even like it's there's just I hate that. Like that is a pet. Waste is something that bugs me. Like waste that I hate that. Teachers talked to me in elementary and middle school. Like I got in trouble in those schools, or not in trouble, but they would like pull me aside and say like you don't have to like you can waste a little bit more. I would use my pencils down to the stubs and stuff like that. So it's not like I don't care about the environment. It's not like I'm wasteful. It's like I try to cut corners wherever I can when it's something that personally affects me. Like whenever I can take that. I mean, I'm not talking about cutting corners through content or anything, but I mean like cutting corners in something that affects me, like just using a pencil or something like that. I don't like wasting. And so like I know people are going to come after me and be like, "Oh, this guy just doesn't care about the environment. He's just like, I don't know, maybe he's paid propagandist." I've been called that before. I've been called a shill for like of being paid for big companies and that. I've been accused of working for both Soros and the Koch brothers, but I care about the environment. Like I care about not wasting things. And when I look at this, all I see is waste and destruction and just awful things. Here we go. The social and economic justice and security part of the Green New Deal. Massive federal investments and assistance to organizations and businesses participating in the Green New Deal and ensuring the public gets a return on that investment. So nothing. That says nothing there. That does not tell me anything. Ensure the environmental and social costs of emissions are taken into account. Provide job training and education for all. Again, job training and education for all. It's not going to cost anything. We can afford it. It's all going to make money in the end. And invest in R&D. Someone actually, who was it? I think it was Joe Rogan actually, brought up like remember that if you've ever known that guy, that like is a really bad singer but thinks he's a good singer. Like the reason I'm not a singer is because I know I'm a bad singer. I mean, I don't really want to be a singer, but that's because I know I'm a bad singer. It's because I know my voice is not singer worthy. If you've ever you've seen people that want to be something and they're bad at it. Like they're really bad, like not even close. They just know they can't do it. When we're talking about job training and education to all, we're talking about the person that's like, yeah, I want an 8-year gender studies degree. Yeah, I'm the person that wants to I want to be a I'm trying to pick a girl. Like I want to pick the stereotype or the go-to underwater basket weaver. This is talking about just, yeah, across the board, everyone. We're not talking about like only the good investments. We're talking about everyone, which by default is not a good investment. Invest in R&D of new, clean, and renewable energy technologies, doing direct investments in frontline and deindustrialized communities that would otherwise be hurt by the transition to prioritize economic benefits there. Use democratic and participatory processes led by frontline and vulnerable communities to implement G&D projects locally. Ensure that all Green New Deal jobs are union jobs that pay prevailing wages and hire local. Again, what does that have to do with saving the environment? I don't know. Guarantee a job with family-sustaining wages. Protect right of all workers to unionize and organize. I can't tell if that's bad grammar or not. I think that's right. Strengthen and enforce labor, workforce health and safety, anti-discrimination, and wage and hour standards. Enact and enforce trade rules to stop the transfer of jobs and pollution overseas, and grow domestic manufacturing, which is interesting there. They're kind of just saying, like, yeah, we're going to stop billionaires from leaving because you know that's what's going to happen, right? If it costs so much that we can take every penny from billionaires and companies and it's still not going to be enough, you know that they're going to start going after those people and they're going to say, see ya, and leave. Because they're like, why would I give up, 70% of my income, 90%? I don't know. Why would I give up so much of my income for this? They wouldn't. They're just going to pack up and leave because they're not morons. Ensure public lands, waters, and oceans are protected and eminent domain is not abused. Obtain free, prior, and informed consent of indigenous peoples. Ensure an economic environment free of monopolies and unfair competition. Provide high-quality healthcare, housing, economic security, and clean air, clean water, healthy food, and nature to all. See, I don't get that. Like, why hasn't that happened yet? If we can provide healthcare, housing, economic security, clean air, clean water, healthy food, and nature to all, to everyone, why haven't we done that? That's what I don't get. Like, it's not that there's a bunch of evil people just hoarding all your money. Like, that's not how it is. That is the situation in some cases. Like, there are people that are just corrupt and greedy and just taking your money. Usually happens in government more often than anywhere else. There are people that do that, but to say that, like, that's the reason we don't, like, all we have to do is just make this big investment project and everything will be great. No, this isn't gonna work. I'm sorry. We're at the end here. This is fantasy. All 6 pages. Nonsense. This went on for nearly an hour. But yeah, let me know what you think in the comments section. Hopefully, if you once supported the Green New Deal, hopefully you don't now. I just, part of me, like, I understand the Trump effect in that we don't want to give Ocasio-Cortez more attention than she deserves, because I think a lot of conservatives are complaining about the stupidest things with her that give her more attention, because you guys saw this with Trump. Like, when someone insults Trump for a stupid reason, like for something that's just like, it's not an argument at all, it's not something that's even bad, it's just pure hatred or whatever, and like based on nothing, then yeah, you're going to start to associate with him. You're going to start to side with him for that reason. And the same thing is happening to AOC, because sometimes they'll go after her for stupid things. But so I am worried about that. But when it comes to stuff like this, like the Green New Deal, like, I'm sorry, like, you have to go through this stuff. You have to go through and say how insanely stupid it is. And that's part of how you win. You ridicule. You don't get angry. You don't, like, say, oh, this person's so bad. Like how someone was complaining about a congressman for how she dressed, and it's like, that's so dumb. But when it comes to criticizing her for these kind of things, yeah, like, do it. Don't just say, like, yeah, it's dumb, but, like, ridicule it and show how stupid it is. Don't just, like, show how dumb it is. That's what I did. I went through the whole 6 pages, and this is obviously stupid. This is, oh my God. It's terrible. It's moronic. It makes no sense at all. But yeah, that's how you do it. That's how you criticize people like her. Without, like, doing the Trump effect thing, you show why it's incredibly moronic. You don't just say it is. You show it. Because I don't see how anyone that doesn't have their, like, head in the ground, or what do you call it, like, ostriching or whatever it's called, the ostrich brigade. Yeah, to quote something from Gab.ai, the ostrich brigade. Anyone that just doesn't have their fingers in their ears, that aren't paying attention at all, anyone can see how stupid this is. It's moronic. But yeah, let me know what you think in the comments section. Share this video around for people. I've seen a lot of people sharing, like, quotations here and there. I think it's good to go through the whole thing. I get not many people have an hour. Just load it in the background. Do something else while you're listening to it. It's incredibly moronic. I don't think I've read anything so dumb. This is like less implementable than, like, Article 13. But yeah, subscribe for more. If you enjoyed this video, if you thought it was informative, hit the subscribe button. And thanks for watching.